I think this time I got the audio worked out. Now I'm going to try to get the jackass out of me and do a better job for you guys than I did last time. Had a tech guy come in, help me out. Had some problems. He didn't even understand. He's like, how did you do that? I said, I don't know. I don't know. So anyway, I hope all is well with everyone. I got a lot of stuff to cover today. Man, I tell you, the more you get into this stuff, it's really studying the game. It really humbles you because the more you learn you don't know. So I got a bunch of stuff. It's going to be focused on the Fangio system and how our linebackers and defensive linemen are going to possibly play out in this. Now, this is going to be a loose take. I'm kind of running a trial balloon on this information, looking to get some wisdom from you guys. And then I'm going to do it in a podcast more in depth as I break into it, but really, really interesting stuff. So I'm going to chill out for a few minutes here, let people get on. Anybody got any good stories, any positive stories? I love positive stories. It's been a good week for me, pretty much. I had a disaster week last week. But my son is he's a good kid, but he's got some challenges. And he's been breaking through them and really being a real stud as far as overcoming his stuff. So I was so happy this week. I was able to get myself in my combine a pursuit to do a little better in that. So this was a fantastic week for me. And I'm hoping the audio rock and rolls and I do okay as well to kind of cap it off. So I'm going to go over a couple things. I'll give you the whole list. Basically, I want to cover the whole Diggs thing quickly and why, it's the nature of fans, especially Dolphins fans at this stage, to be like happy that Diggs is doing what he's doing. But I want to touch on that quickly and kind of say we shouldn't. Every fan, although inside you might be a little happy about it, should be outraged because there's no way that a guy who's making that much money should hold a whole fan base hostage. And I'm going to just touch a little bit on Hill, and then I'm going to get into Cook, his little interview. I thought there was some real interesting stuff there, and I think I need to, after that interview, add a little addendum on some of the things I've been talking about him as a running back. And I think it's fair context to what that interview will, adds to what I've been saying. And then I want to go into the Fangio system, kind of break that down a little bit, just in case you don't have it. And then I'm going to go into the linebackers and the D linemen. It's really interesting, guys. And tell you the truth, I've been spending a lot of years doing the offensive line. What is this? Figures. I got my, hold on a second. I will be back. Of course, something has to go wrong. My power booster over here is making a noise. 1 second. All right. Woo, had to have some kind of problem. All right, so I put a booster up in there to keep this thing running just in case there's any problems. And of course, I ran all day and it kind of went a little dry. So that's what I'm going to cover today. And really, guys, there's Fangio made a comment like, hey, so trade him or drop him. What to do with Williams? It does bother me. All right. Well, we'll get into that in a little bit. I'm gonna hold this one. I put this up here, and this is something I'm gonna want to touch on a little bit later. It's a complicated thing, and I guess I got to do it. I'm an offensive line guy. Listen, we haven't had a good center since Pouncey. And it's really only since Pouncey's first 2 or 3 years before the injuries started happening. He had like one peak maybe in like 16, but he's still out a couple of games. It is so hard for certain organizations to find certain position groups. Every staff is a group of people that have a series of protocols. that are generated at the top by a few people. And like everything else, some people have strengths and weaknesses. This is why certain teams have a tendency to find certain players that are good, and they also struggle with certain position groups. Now, whatever you think about Greer and whatever you think about this staff, they do hit on positions. But one position is very clear they don't hit on well is the offensive line. Williams, you know, I was a little skeptical, because I was concerned at him in left guard because I saw he struggled with power. When he struggled with power, he had a tendency to hold, and that's where a lot of those penalties came from. And he was a little bit light in the pants. And when I looked at him, I said, this guy's a center. And some people kind of like, nah, that's ridiculous. And it ended up being that way. He had trialed some in the Cowboys, but I just really believed what he could do. And he did have some snapping issues, but it was his first season. And to me, you got this guy, and you are lucky to have found Connor Williams to transition him into a new position, and have him excel even higher than he was at his original position. Now, he's not marinated on this team. He's a Cowboy who kind of got a little bit of a shaft. He came here and took a flyer, and he's only making about $7 million a year. They'll say 8.5 this year, but they're not factoring in what he made last year. Over the 2 seasons, about 7.13. Very underpaid. And when he transitioned over to center, he was effectively running the risk of taking a severe pay cut. Guards make more than centers, generally speaking. The new run of contracts are very high for these guards, the top end ones, but even the low ones at 13, 14. And 13, 14 is some of the top center contracts. So he transitioned over. He rolled the dice. He went with the staff. He played exceptionally well. And now if he comes back and he has any struggles or he gets hurt, he's done. And he's going to have a real hard time really resetting himself. And so I understand what he's saying. He's like, look, I'm a guard. I came here and played a position that's got a little bit less money. I did really well. I manned this position, the second best next to Tehran. I was healthy all year. Pay me. And we brought in Chubb, traded a whole bunch of picks to get him, and we paid him top salary when he hasn't produced and hasn't been consistent to the level of the pay, because we think that he can get to that point. And I think maybe we even thought we could get Fangio to capitalize that. But we kind of paid on projection, and now he's here and he did it, and he's saying, I want some security. Now, you could see Sealer's kind of saying the same thing. He didn't show up to OTAs. He showed up to mini camps, but he didn't show, and that's a shot fired. And then you can look at Hunt. Hunt's even saying, I'm not going to deal with the contract. The contract is going to be handled with my agent. But if he plays to what his level is, when you look at these contracts, that could be like 15 to 17 million. And so we have to build around something. Now, my build is, and I'm sorry if I'm going on too long, but it's a real good question, and it's got to be answered thoroughly because it's a very important question. Now, I would build around the offensive line. I wouldn't try to have a top 5 offensive line, but I would like to have 2 or 3 guys like we have that are excellent, and a couple of guys that are average, and then nice depth. That's how I would build it. But Greer believes in building heavy on the defense, heavy on the skills, and really just kind of going to the tight end and the offensive line position. And everyone's saying we're going to have plenty of money next year. But to me, whatever you got to do, you better, especially with Tua having an injury history, lock up this offensive line. I don't like Eichenberg at guard. I don't like him at tackle. I believe he has the potential to play center. When you look at his short arms, his inability to deal with power, I think he's a smart guy. Hey, what's going on? What's going on, brother? I'm doing a long diatribe on a great question because it was about the offensive line. So there we go. So we bank on Jackson, who hasn't done anything. We bank on Eichenberg, who hasn't done anything. And we don't support the offensive line guys that are doing their thing. And Connor is a guy that has done a ton of stuff for us. Okay. He is the best center we've had since Pouncey. And in a zone stretch, you have to understand when you run a zone stretch, everybody's on the move and you're stretching the defense, and you want to have that cutback lane, back lane, because the edge is really not going to be open that much. It's a low percentage hit. And that's why it's a very inconsistent system. But that cutback's got to be there. And the center is the guy that fortifies the middle of that stretch to allow the cutback. And so you need a quality center so you can go left and right. And so to me, long story short, because I got a lot to talk about, and I could probably go on this for the whole show, you lock this guy up. You show him commitment. You don't go get Cook or whatever. You try to roll money over. To me, but it was his first season. He'd never been a center before. And if you go, and they weren't all over the place. They, he had a couple, maybe like 7 that would, whoa. But for a guy who played there one season, that's pretty impressive. And you should know by now as a professional. Wait, I'm sorry, brother. I'm reading without showing. I apologize. His snaps were all over the place at times. I'm not a professional, I'm a yutz. Okay. I'm just a guy, a little bit, whatever. But when you got a professional OC, professional staff, professional head coach that have watched guys transition and snap, the curve of how these guys are going to grow year to year, given what they show you, given their talents. So either they believe that he can snap well enough and he's going to grow and he was a basketball player, or they just need to move on from him. But you don't believe Eichenberg's never snapped and you've already moved him over. So to me, I think this guy's snaps will get better. It might take to year 3 to get to where you want, but those were pretty good for a guy who's never really done it before, aside from a couple of weeks in training camp the year before or something. And so it is hard for us, for anybody, but for us to find offensive linemen, and offensive linemen make the NFL world go round. Me, GM Curtis, I believe in the offensive line. And I think you got to get this. You certainly got to get one of these 2 guys, but you've invested so much money. You've rolled more money back into the season by extending certain contracts. It's going to get hard. I don't know if they can actually sign him. I personally think when you look at the cap, you got Wilkins, you got Sealer, you got Hunt, and you got Connor. Top 4 guys. Now, people say, you can get $75 million or whatever by cutting guys and whatever. No, you can't. It's pre-June. Pre-June, you need the money. When you look at, like, say, Baker, I think you can get like 10 or 13 for him post-June, but after the dead cap and the cut, you're only going to get 5 pre-June. And so it's going to be tough to sign all 4 of these guys. I think one guy is certainly going to have to walk, and that's a big discussion. Like, maybe you could trade one of these guys and get that cap space and use those picks. But I certainly think one of these guys is going to walk. I just hope it's not Connor, unless he's not really good at snapping. And maybe they see that. I don't know. So anyway, that's my take on it. Does that make sense? Anyway, I really wish I could talk. I wish we were in a bar, man. I had some chips and some wings and some drinks, man. I could hear you guys respond, go, "You're an idiot." Oh, yeah, I agree with you. I really prefer that. We got to do that someday. All right, cool. Anyway, going to move on to the Diggs Hill thing. Now, Diggs is holding this team hostage. He pulled a ridiculous move. He's locked up the next 2 years. It's like 20 or 30 million if they want to move him on. He has all the power and he's going, boop, I got the power. I'm going to stick it to you. Now, some Bills fans say he showed up today. It's not a big deal. But like I said, with the Singletary thing, if you saw the video, it's a bad relationship that you never know. That relationship's going to go off and screw you over. Oh, wait, question. Is the audio good this time? Anybody just is somebody tap in? Yeah, you don't sound like an echoing idiot. So Diggs is a prima donna. He's an egoist. And that's part of the job description. It's kind of like if you were a tunnel rat in Vietnam. Thanks. Thanks. If you were a tunnel rat in Vietnam, you had to be short and you had to be a little short on sanity to go into those little 2x2 holes and ferret out the enemy. It's part of the job description to be a little bit of a prima donna for the most part with these receivers. And so it's expected for guys like Diggs and yes, even Hill to have a little bit of that egoism. But when it goes too far, fans of all teams should decry it because it's just not fair. And this could really pop up and derail the team. There's things like he was saying, so I'm listening to guys cap, which means, on a cool talk, it means lion. And the only person he could have been talking about was either McDermott or Allen. It sounds more like Allen. This is just a terrible thing, even if whatever the case may be, not being professional. And when you tie it to Hill, look at Hill. I was trying to go back and find the games, but he was having a breakdown with Mahomes over the 21 playoffs, and you could see how venomous he was when he left. And so to me, you never know when these guys are going to go off. I'm hoping Hill's grown up. I'm hoping Hill is done with that kind of stuff. But if you celebrate it, watch out. It's a dangerous thing, and it's terrible. It's terrible. And I think if there's any, chat boards or whatever, you should just call this guy out and not necessarily cheer the fact that's going to help us win. Because ultimately, I think this is a time bomb for the Bills. So, all right, with that, I'm going to get into the Cook interview quick. I was impressed. I like Cook when I've heard him in the past. I like what he's done as a runner. I've seen him run. I love his jump cut. I love his ability to pop and go. He's kind of patient. He's agile. But there was a couple of things that he had brought up that I really liked from a personality standpoint. And he had mentioned that teams are moving away from controlling the ground. And I really love that. I know he's a running back and he's got to say that. But I love that kind of talk because I personally have been saying for a few years, the NFL is moving more towards a balanced or a pass balance approach because they understand controlling. I'll say it. Control. I get that. I got to learn how to do this, juggle this stuff. I got attention span of a gnat. Anyway, I'll get to you, Bo, in a second. To me, controlling the ground is coming back to prominence. It's never going to be what it used to be. But I do believe it is going to be critical. And you can see over the last couple of years with the Bengals winning when they ran. You see what the Chiefs did last year. And so I really like what Cook said. And he said, the position's getting overlooked. Now, I believe in some instances, most, but I do believe there are some teams and some GMs that are dialing in on this. And I enjoyed that. And so he said, he wants to come and help somebody win. But he also said, give me the ball. He wants to get the ball. And to me, that's a little bit of concern if we bring him in here because you got all these backs. Mostert and Wilson, they're part of the chemistry of last year. And then you got A-Chain. And then if you bring him in, you can get this animosity of who's going to get the ball. And it can breed something underneath. And so that was a little bit of my concern. I got just 3 good questions here. I'm going to get to them in a second. I'm going to finish up on Cook. Now, Cook said he had a torn labrum for 3 seasons. And to me, that's spectacular. When you look at the stats, you got to add context to that. If you've ever run the football, you understand how valuable the arms are, whether it's holding the football, whether it's getting guys off you, swatting things away. That arm popping off the ground, when you've got a damaged labrum, even catching a football, raising your arms. So this is serious mitigation on what he was able to do. But my retort to that would be like, why did it take so long? Why did he have to become a free agent and not get it fixed when he had this large contract? And then 2, this is just online research, so don't count it. But it said labrum recovery, full recovery is between 6 months and a year. And so maybe there's a concern with that. When is it going to be fully healed? Why didn't he get it fixed? I don't know. But to me, the torn labrum really adds some bonus to the stats that you saw, and his ability, the drop in the break tackles from like 33 to, I don't know, 19 and then like 15 or 12, I think. That makes a lot of sense. So this guy, though, I think is going to look for a $10 million contract. He looks like he wants the money. He wants to get the ball, and he wants to help somebody win. We'll see what happens with us. So I just want to cover that quick. Now I'm going to before I get into the main part, some really good questions here and comments. And I would really appreciate if anybody sees answers they want to give them too, because I'm just a talking monkey. I really believe this is a forum and not me being some kind of guru, big jabberer. Anyway, Curtis, do you think Wilkins' DT position isn't valued in the Fangio system? I hear that opinion everywhere. It seems like in a light box like Fangio runs, Wilkins could be a big piece. That's a big part of what I want to talk about tonight, because I was under a misconception of what he ran, and I got some really juicy stuff that I'm going to get to on that. So I'm going to cover that in a little bit, Bo. It is really interesting. And for the quick answer, I think this guy is a coveted player and a critical player, although we do have some interesting options, and I'll get on that in a second. Now, Ken Sean, my camp take is that we should expect Brandon Peel to take the backup snaps. Raekwon, Sealer, and Christian, Agba, and Fangio's 5-man front can play inside in this scheme. That's defensively. Agba can. I think Agba is a guy that I'm going to cover that a little bit as well. And Raekwon's, it's an interesting point that you brought up, Ken Sean, is Raekwon in Flores' system, it's a little different. I got to go back over the interior techniques, but what Fangio runs is a man-and-a-half gap system. I had heard about it, but I didn't really register it. I was still operating under the old principles of 2 and 1 gap. Really, when you study it out now, the 2 gap guys are almost extinct. 2 gap is almost a dead approach to D-line techniques, because usually the guys that can handle 2 guys are the guys that can't pass rush. And the ability to pass rush as well as stop the run is critical. That balanced in skill sets is absolutely critical. So 1 gap is still hot to trot in a lot of places. There's 1.5 gap is big, and a lot of teams have moved over to that as they've moved over to the Fangio style. And I'm going to cover that history real quick. So I'll get into all those guys. I'm going to cover the D-line and linebackers in relation to the Fangio system. Now, okay. Dolphinator, I'm concerned if Connor wins the contract battle and gets the bag, it could spoil the team as a group, possibly inspiring or empowering Hunt, Wilkins, Davis, and Seal to hold out. Nightmarish scenario. Honestly, I don't think Wilkins, Sealer, Davis is definitely not. He's fighting for his career. Davis is fighting for his career. Wilkins, he knows his deal. He ain't holding out. He's going out to play. He's banking on himself, because you know what? If he has another good year, and this system I think is going to help him thrive, his money's going to go even higher. He's got it all, because Miami, what are they going to do? Put a free agency tag on him? They're going to be paying over $20 million anyway when you look at the numbers. And then Sealer, he's got his money. He showed a little bit of, hey, I'm not happy. But he had made some money, but he's banking on himself too. So they're not going anywhere. But Connor, he's in a little bit of a different situation. And because he's going to be playing center and not playing guard, his immediate pay scale drops a substantial amount. You look at the top center, Kelsey is $14 million, and the guy's a total stud. And you look at some of these other guys, top guys, they're in a 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 range for left and right guard. So you're looking at almost like a 20% pay cut to play center. And so I think it's a little bit of a different situation for Connor. And I think Greer's not going to. I think Connor's going to show up, but this could be a little bit of a, I don't know, a little bit of a thing. Yeah, more teams are using. Hey, Kurt, what's going on, brother? You have to, because you can't afford it. The cap is, again, people just got this misnomer, this wrong concept about the cap. It's flexible like a 16-year-old gymnast, but it can break if you push it far enough. And you don't want to put too much money in a running back unless they're super elite, and there's very few. They just the talent's not really there anymore. On his contract, he is smelling fishy. Yeah, well, you got to do your thing. I mean, you go look at Greer, what he's done to some of these guys. He's totally stuck it to him and forced them to take pay cuts. So, let's see, Ken Sean. On offense, I expect 60 of those passes last year that Tua made will be audible and or outright running plays, the dump offs. Yeah, that's I'm not going to get into the offense, Ken Sean, but I agree. There's got to be a sizable philosophy shift on the offense and how it's run. And I went through that the last time in my bad audio garbled situation, but I'll deal with that another time. I'm going to stick on a defense. All right. So guys, Carroll came in, he ran single high safety. It was in vogue. It was a thing to do. Selah was over it with the 49ers. He I'll get to you in a second. Leave it. Transitioned over to the Fangio style of too high, cover two, which is really cover two, cover three. It's a cover two, cover three. And there's a lot of reasons for that, because it's really hard to find the talent to run a cover one. And it became, it was a better way. This is one of the reasons why you're seeing a little bit of dip in the passing game. It used to be hot to trot, and it was like all over the place. And you saw the passing numbers drop. A lot of that has to do with Fangio's style, which I'm going to cover in a minute. So Selah over the Jets. He's got a hybrid Carroll and hybrid Fangio system. And there's a little bit to talk about that. I don't know if I'll get to that tonight. But Fangio's system really started changing the way things moved. Now, Fangio, in the year the Rams lost the Super Bowl, I can't remember what that was. He ran a 6-1 light, and they would just roll everything. And that's how they shut the Rams down. And when the Patriots played them in the Super Bowl, they ran an adjusted version of the 6-1 light. And after that, teams have been moving more and more to the Fangio style, which is really, I'll get into that in a second. But it's an old stuff, but new stuff with Fangio's take added in. So I'm going to answer this question because I know I'll forget. I got ADD, so I'm going to answer it first, and it's defensive oriented. So that kind of meshes. You think that Noah will play better under Fangio's system? If I'm thinking correctly, Noah's better when he's only having to track a player short term. Yes. Now, a really good question, and something that I've been battling with. If you look, there was an IG report from the Dolphins. They posted Wilson getting a touchdown. He was burning Noah. Noah just lacks fast twitch pop. He's really good if you got one move. As soon as you have a double move, he gets left in the dust. He's not fast twitch. I think he works better in zone. He's just not man. He's not physical enough. I don't know what his cerebral aspects are, but I'm going to get into what we run here. And I do think there's potential, but my concern with Noah is he lacks fast twitch, which is so weird. His parents are like Olympic level athletes. And it's the double move that really concerns me with what he does. I don't know if he's going to make it. If you're playing cover 2, cover 3, and because they'll run, I guess I do. They run cover 2, cover 3. So they'll play 2 safety high with what they call match zone technique. And which means is sometimes man, sometimes zones, depending on what happens. But then they'll usually have one or both corners playing off. And so that rolls. Sometimes it'll roll into cover 1, more often roll into cover 2, and then sometimes it rolls into cover 3. But when you got cover 3, that guy's got to be able to take the top and hold it. And I worry about Noah holding that top. You got to be able to hold the top. So I don't know. I got to see some film. I got to see how they're playing him because he really doesn't jam well. And he can play short zones, like you said. He's not bad. But when you're running what Fangio running, I'm going to break it down a little bit more. You need more from your corner and your nickels, certainly. So I don't know. I hope so. I like the kid. I think the kid's a good kid. I think his family's real nice. I want him to work out. But there's something that's always bothered me ever since I've watched him. Like, he seems like I've watched him just like his shoulders drop in the middle of a play when he gets beat in 2020 and 2021. There's just something I'm very concerned with Noah, and I don't know. Now, let me get into Fangio here. So I'm going to I got a little image here, an image, as I like to call it. And this is what it's called, the cover 6. Okay. And I'm going to try to make it real simple. I've been spending all week studying it. I'm not some rocket scientist. I just sat down for hours trying to figure this out because it's really complex. We ran a physical, attacking, big play defense with Flores. This is the exact opposite. This is a bend but don't break. Make them march down the field, make them make mistakes, show them everything pre-snap, but then post-snap, you're morphing and making them think, and that allows you to get your offensive lineman to the quarterback to put the pressure on to do your thing. So you can see right here, the top is the offensive line. You can see the center, the half circles with the black is the 2 guards. And then you got your 2 tackles after that. And then you got the Y is the tight end, and you got the SZ and X. Those are the receivers. Now, when they run the 6, cover 6, what that means is you're taking cover 6 and you're breaking into cover 4 and cover 2. Okay. And so you see on the left side, that's the strong side of the formation. So whenever they bring out a heavy receiver, a heavy, pass catching group. Thanks, brother. Thanks, guys. I'm so intrigued, man. I tell you, I was humbled this week. I had so many things wrong, man. And I was so excited about being wrong because it meant I had a chance to learn. I can barely control myself. It was just so exciting what I learned from this. And it's just scratching the surface. So this is just a test run, guys. And whatever you think and whatever you can learn, come back at me. Remember, it's Curtis at Ace per Head. Curtis at Ace per Head. Send me articles, send me knowledge, send me information. I'll say you put it there and we can work together to come to a better understanding and a better evaluation together. But this is really fascinating stuff. So you had a cover 1 and yeah, brother, no worries. I don't even know if I'm going to finish now, I'll tell you the truth. Thank you, man. Thank you for everything, guy. I appreciate it. So you got a cover 6, they call, and the strong side of the field, you put your cover 4. So you can see you got the end, the 2 tackles, they're in there playing like a 2 technique, and then the ends, they're playing wide, the 5 technique, the E's, the ends, the T's, the tackles. And then, it's kind of like a 2 or a one eye, a 2 eye, maybe that's what it'd be, a 2 eye. And then that would be the left tackle. And then the right tackle, you can see he's a little in on the center. And so that would be anyways, whatever. I'm not getting into the technique so much. That's like a 1, but it's slashing over to the 2. And so when you got those 4 guys there, you are a pass coverage defense. You want to load the secondary up with cover guys to stop the pass. And you want to use 4 guys up front to do the 1.5 gap controlling of the offensive line. You keep a light box. Fangio likes nickels. And so you got the cover 4 to the left. So you come out and you see they get the heavy amount of receivers on the left. You play your cover 4. That means your middle linebacker is right there. You got your nickel to the left, which is the end. You got your corner. He plays a fourth of the field. And then you got your other safety behind him. He plays the mix match zones. And he's watching, and depending on the route combinations, he's either in man or zone. I'm not going to get into any of that because personally, I don't have it all down and I might totally screw it up. So I'm going to show you this one first. Hold on a second. So this is what it kind of looks like. So you can see this is when he was with the Broncos. And you see the corner on the edge. He's playing off. He's playing like 7-8 yards off. He's dropping into that corner, the top of the field around the blue box. That nickel he's dropping in. He's taking care of the seam flat. And then the safety playing behind him, he drops into a middle zone. He's got a third because this is going to be end up being a cover 3 look. And then you got the other corner. He's playing off and he's dropping it. So you got the cover 3. Okay. And then you have the linebacker inside. He's dropping for the hooks. He's dropping over the middle. And then you got the other, what looks like could be a safety creeping up, or I think that's a safety creeping up. And he's playing in short. Now he's going to either drop back, he's going to read the release, and he's going to play the outs. And then you got the other linebacker. He's watching the back and he's playing a little bit man. And so this is one of the looks you're getting, but it's all predicated on running a nickel look, taking away the deep pass, and then forcing guys to read post snap, whether it's going to be cover 1, cover 2, or cover 3 or cover 4, and rolling things and making you. But if you notice, a lot of the stuff that's going to be available is around these blue boxes. And we can get into that later. And I'm not going to get into it too long. Hey, Lamar, what's going on, brother? Thank you for making it. I'm hoping I'm trying to be coherent because I'm pulling the stuff all together. And I learned a ton. And I was operating on old principles, pretty much Pete Carroll principles. And I had to relearn. And I'm going to spend next month boning up because there is some real interesting stuff here. So let me get back to this. So we have a lot of different looks, but the essential platform for this defense is the cover 6. Strong side, you got your cover 4. Weak side, you get a cover 2. So I'm going to work back again. The 2 safeties that we're going to have playing, which is beautiful for Holland, is he's going to use his brain and he's going to have a mix match zone. So he might play zone, he might play cover, and this is going to allow him to make plays. And then the other safety, which could be Cam. And honestly, to tell you the truth, I like Cam best at safety. I also like him at corner. But I think he could really thrive at safety because he's smart, because he's fast. He lacks a little twitch. He lacks a little bit of physicality at 180 pounds, but he can play that over-the-top near safety along with Holland in this mix match zone where they're kind of like the generals, dictating and reading and then taking advantage. So that's kind of the look we got going on here. There's a lot of stuff inside this to break down. Let me see. I wrote some notes over here. Okay, so because of the situation of our style of coverage, this is a pass-stopping defense, but it's predicated on being able to handle the run with 4 with a light box. And a light box means, much like Belichick, or the Patriots, the Bills do, running nickel a lot. All right. So there's pros and cons to it, depending on your personnel and your talent group. And that's a really long conversation I can't really fully get into. So the light box is critical. It's about, yeah, they've been saying that for a while, Kurt. You know, the Bills fans, I said that, look, I'm going to take a break because I'm going to sip my tea here. I'm old. I got an old windpipe. Hold on. Now this will kind of tie into what we're talking about a little bit, but I'll take a little pause here. The cap is real. Anybody who says it's not is, out of their mind. If that was the case, then why after the Super Bowl did the Chiefs cut some players and let them walk and have to retool with a lot of draft picks? If the cap wasn't real, why is Edmonds not with the Bills? And why are they so tight and had to have this like little, dance around free agency? It is, I said earlier, it's flexible like a 16 or 14-year-old gymnast. 16 is actually a little late for the gymnast. So I got to correct that. Like a 14-year-old gymnast, but there's only so far it can go. And we are pushing the boundaries. Now, I'm not going to say we can't sign everybody next year. I'll spend a whole time going over. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you the cap, and then we can go through player by player, what they're going to cost, what we can do, and when the money comes due, because some money is going to come post-June 1st, way more money than what comes pre-June. But you need pre-June money in order to sign your players. I could be wrong. We'll go over together. Maybe I'll do that one, maybe next live or something like that. And then we can really do a war gaming of this to really see what the situation is. But you look across the league and you can see the cap is legit. It can be pushed, but at some point, all that pushed back money is going to hit. So let me back to the defense now. Guys, it is really fascinating stuff. The Athletic did a really great article in 2022 on Fangio. And I'm basing a lot of the stuff that I learned off that article and a few others. I'm actually going to try to compile those articles and I'll get them to you. So maybe next live, because really this is about an information process. And I believe the more that we exchange information, the more apt we are to really know what the heck we're talking about and not talking out of our rear end. And it's got to be a team, a pool of information and wisdom. Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you. And I've learned so much from the comments. And I'm not just saying that. I'm telling you, I have learned tons from the comments. So now you had this move. You had the Seahawks with the cover one and the unbelievable, defense they had with talent the drafts they had, the talent they had acquired. It was unique. And a lot of people were trying to imitate that, but just didn't have the talent. And so the move towards this Fangio style pass covering defense was a counterbalance to the inability to get all this talent, and also just a way to stop this crazy pass game. And it worked. And so this is where we're at. But it is predicated on stopping the run with a light box. Now, I can't remember the brother who brought it up. My memory is not so hot, but he said, go over Wilkins, Seala, Agba, and all the D linemen and how they're going to be operating inside this defense. And I'll tell you, I was wrong on some stuff that I covered earlier because my mind was it was going to be more two gap, but I did not really fully understand the differences between 2 and 1.5 gap. So I'm going to cover that now. Let me get my little image over here for my own personal usage. So Wilkins is going to do really well, guys, in this system. And that's scary good and scary bad, because if he plays to what I think he could play in this system, his numbers are going to meet Simmons, or because of the year difference, he might actually eclipse it by a little bit. And here's why. What he was running previously, he was asked to do a lot of stuff. Sometimes it was 2 gaps, sometimes it was 1 gap. Man, you guys are killing me. This is a good question. All right, here. All right, I'm gonna get back to Wilkins in a second. My OCD and ADD, man. That was such a good question. And I got to ask you written down over here, dude. You're on point. Okay, so listen. if there's a knock to Fangio, the person, if there's a knock to Fangio, his defense, the knock is he has a tendency to blame situations around him, and that's a little bit concerning, a little bit anecdotal. You don't want to, blow that up. That's a little bit of the knock. It was kind of fouled him a little bit. And then his defenses have a little bit of a problem stopping third down offenses. Now, it's all anecdotal. Fangio said he took a time away and he had to rethink things. And I think he's adding wrinkles and he's growing. The guy's real smart. He doesn't come off as like a scholar of the game, but he is. And so if you look back at the Broncos, when he had a pretty good defense, 2021, he was 29th worst on third down defense. In 2020, he was 21st worst at stopping third down defense. In 2019, it was his best year. He was 18th worst on third down defense. Now, conversely, if you look at the Dolphins, 2022, last year, we were 30th worst, 21, 26th worst. 2020, we were first best. And in 2019, we were 20th. And so there you have the two looks. But you have to understand that you got to compare the talents. I don't know how to really compare the talents yet, but there could be a little bit of an issue stopping third down. Again, nothing like last year, but I don't think Fangio's had a Holland, Howard, Ramsey, and then, what he's going to have up front. I think this is the most talented defense he's had. So that talent is a big portion of what happens. I got to go back now because I saw the stat today, Bo, and I got to do really a couple season study on Fangio and why it was the way it was, because you can look at stats and it's not film. Film's everything, and stats just kind of condense stuff. So this is something I'm a little concerned, not concerned, curious about. I'll have to do the studies and get back to you. But I do think that there's a huge talent advantage here. And also, when you look at the matchups of what we got here, in some ways, I think it's in division-wise, I think it's going to help us a little bit. And I'll get to that in a second. So now, Wilkins, what the big deal was using hands for gap and a half technique. Okay. Now, a lot of the times when you run two gap, you're just planting, dude. You're just planting. It's not really about hands. It's your lower body. That's why all those guys are the giant butts and the huge, the Will Forks and Nagatas and stuff like that. They were the masters of that two gap setting, and they were just lower tank, shorter kind of guys. And the ones, like Nagata was good at getting after the quarterback. So he was a stud of a stud. But when you get to one gap, it's about shooting, quick moves, hands and rips. And it really is about your acceleration and penetrating that gap before that lineman gets out of his stance. But in gap half, it's about getting your hand inside and not losing that hand, good hands, and getting your hat pointed at the half a gap you're supposed to secure. And so hands and movement, and then a little bit of grounding with your lower body, that is really what you're looking for, because you're not covering every gap. You're covering one gap, and then you're kind of spying on another. And with four guys, you can't get all the gaps. Now, Wilkins, if you watch him, the guy could play two gap, he could play one gap, and he's going to be able to play 1.5 gaps. Excellent, because his hands are good, his agility is phenomenal, his speed is phenomenal, his lower body is phenomenal, and he's a little bit shorter, and he's going to be able to get in there. I don't know how they're going to run him. I'm sure it's going to be a little bit over here, which you can see they got the two eye, and you got the one gap, or sort of. So it might be 2 eye. I guess you maybe 2 eye or something. I don't know. You see, they have one guy shade over to the center, and then they have one guy playing off the outside shoulder of the guard. He could play either one of those positions, and I think he's going to dominate it. And the whole idea is with the light front that you got is you don't want the run to hit hard and fast and directly, because that's how then you force the second and third level to have to get there super quick. And that puts a lot of pressure on coverage and on the guys covering, especially if you're running a nickel. So what you want is this defensive line to get the hand to lock, control, ride, scout, and then veer off the running back to make him not hit the gap directly and buy some time for the rest of the team to converge. It's essential. And when you look at our linebackers, it's a little bit more essential. And that's going to tie into the linebacker part. And really, when I keep spying it out, my concern, if there is any, is this linebacking group. To me, somebody brought up in the comments and on my podcast, he's like, I think that Fangio's talking about the linebackers. And I have to agree a little bit, but I need to see some. So I'll get that in a second. So to me, Sealer, Agba, Wilkins, and now Raekwon Davis. I love the guy. And what he had to do that first year and then battling through those knee injuries, I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make it. But if you watch, he's got those long arms. He's got good hand placement. And the extra long arms allows him to not be a victim of leverage, okay, in many instances, unless it's an inside zone run. And, there's different techniques that he's going to have to handle. But what a lot of stuff they want you to get the one arm locked in there, and it's almost like an angle look at the run. So everybody's kind of angling, locking, and looking at the next hole. They got their gap, and then they're scouting the next. And to me, Raekwon's got enough speed if he's going at an angle and length. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he ran it with the Bears. Yeah, I got to go back. I got to do a long, long study. It's going to take me about a month to do a full study to match it up with the metrics and the analytics and then cross-reference the talent to really because, guys, it's so complicated to project. Fangio could be the greatest guy in the universe if he doesn't have the right talent, and he could just be lacking talent in one position, and the whole thing could break apart. Zone coverage is so critical that everybody's playing their part. So, yeah, I'm going to go back. I'm going to check the Bears. I'm going to check the Broncos. It's going to have to take a month-long study. So, to me, back to the D-line part, I really like this gap and a half technique when it comes to our front. I love Chubb in it. He played in it. He did well. The only concern I have, and I think it's going to be a little interesting, is Phillips. Now, Phillips has grown in his run defense, and I like him a lot more in gap and a half than I do two gap. I like him best in one gap shooting, you know what I mean? But I don't know how well he's going to be able to play that gap and a half and to handle the blocks. To me, his ability to handle a run is determined whether he can play one of these end positions. Now, he might end up playing a linebacker position. You might end up, instead of the nickel that you see here, you might be able to see some three linebacker positions. I don't know. He's the only guy that I'm a little concerned with in his ability to have only four guys in front of him and a nickel back behind him and be able to handle it. I believe he can. I think this kid works hard. But if there's any weakness on his game, it's his ability to deal with the run. But he did make a substantial jump in year one and year two. And to me, this kid's a stud. I'm still working on my video of him. It's going to be, I think I'm really putting a lot of love into it. But his ability to handle the run is the only concern I have. And if he overcomes that concern, this kid's going to be a stud of studs. So I'm not exactly certain where he's going to fit on, like, say, a first down or run down, but he can cover pretty well. So I'm sure Fangio's scheming up. So that's the line of scrimmage part. Now, the linebacker part is a little bit curious because when you run the zone, you can see here, you got your nickel. You see the big N over there, and he's playing quarter two. So you got a quarter with the corner to the left of him. You got sometimes you got a quarter with the nickel, depending. Sometimes it's quarters, sometimes it's cover three, and sometimes it's cover two. And then the safety, he's playing a quarter, and the yellow safety, he's playing a quarter. So that puts a lot of pressure on these linebackers, depending on what's called, to do their deal. Now, Long, I love what this guy can do. But Vrabel made a very serious statement that his concern was he wasn't taking care of himself like a pro, and he suffered a lot of hamstring stuff, and he was nicked up now in OTAs. And so I don't know what to make of it. I think we got to wait and see. It's concerning because we don't have Long. We're in a little trouble. But Long's not the greatest cover guy, but he can, if you go back into this video of this image here, he can play that hook zone. He can also play the read of the guy coming out of the backfield. I like what he can do there. He's just, if you go back and you look at what he was able to do, his depth of target was only 3.6 yards. So he was given short coverage responsibilities, and he did okay. He did better than Landon Roberts, but he does need to grow a little bit in this. And he might not be our nickel linebacker, but I love him as a first down linebacker. And maybe if he gets in these certain zones, he can improve, but we're going to need him there. Now, after that, you got Van Ginkel. Van Ginkel's moved inside, and it's curious on two parts. Okay, hold on a second. The whistle needs a wetting. Now, Van Ginkel, I love the kid. You know, I love what he was able to do on the edge. I thought he was the grunt to let, Phillips the star shine. But once we brought Chubb in, that was it. I mean, so Fangio talked him back. And so if he talked him back, he had to say, I got plans for you. And so he moved him inside. And that's good news because I like what Van Ginkel does with his attacks, being a dog. The guy, he plays 110%. He's able to stop the run and even pass rush, but he can't cover. Maybe he can play the hook zone. Maybe he can grow in that. But if you have one knock on Van Ginkel, he's been a two-tool guy. Okay, so you got Long, who's a little dinged, not the best cover guy. Then you got Van Ginkel behind him, and he could do a lot of stuff, but coverage ain't one of those things. But they moved him inside, and moving him inside and trying to get him reps, what does that say about Tyndale? And sorry, Dolphin, I didn't show you this thing before. I just mentioned it. I forgot. So where is Tyndale? What is Tyndale needs to shine and show and have production. Chanel over at the KC was picked behind him, and he's been playing for 2 seasons now. He's got the speed. He's got the athleticism, but he's been slow to process. So you got to get something out of this guy. And then you got Duke Riley. Duke Riley, his depth of target was 4.5, which is pretty good. But his coverage is like, okay, it's around what Long does. But now, even I've been talking about Baker not being the guy we want. He hasn't really hit the point of his contract. But I think that Baker has potential. You go back and you look at his coverage last year, and it improved a big deal. He wasn't allowed to blitz like he used to, and he's an elite blitzer. He's a good dog. He's got the ability to be physical. If you go back and you look at his ability to attack, stack, and shed, it improved in every area. So I have some really good faith that Baker can finally show his worth. Now, the downside is his weakness since he's been here has been his ability to process. But it improved last year, and he said he was able to process better. But this linebacking group ties together this secondary. It ties together this front. And when you got 2 linebackers there, they've got to be especially good when you got this light front. And so it's going to be critical that this linebacking group plays well. And it could be a problem for Fangio, even if he has the excellent secondary, even if he has the great front. So really, we've got to see what happens. I think it starts with hoping that Long stays healthy. He needs to be here, guys. If if there's some weird stuff going on with this guy struggling to stay healthy through the season, it's gonna be a big hit on us. But then the next hope's got to be Van Ginkel. And in last, VG, he's a spot guy you're gonna bring inside, depth on the outside. I like Malik Reed a little bit. He showed he can cover a little bit in small settings. He's a guy that we're not really talking about. I think he could play something. He knows Fangio's system. But what about Tyndale? That, to me, is going to be critical. Long's health, Baker's take another half step forward, and Tyndale. And so that's really where we got, because let me get one last point over here with this defense we got. So the beauty of this defense is it stops the pass. Now, where a lot of teams, they'll have, a couple different ways to isolate the star receiver because of what Fangio does with the show everything. And then when it changes post snap, he has way more ways to isolate that star receiver. And, that's really the main benefit of, you got Diggs and not much behind him. And I think it's one of the reasons why they drafted Kincaid, to work the underneath and to kind of get free. But, and you got Wilson over to Jets. To me, I'm more concerned about receiving offenses that have depth at receiver than a star receiver alone, because Fangio's system is good at taking that guy away and forcing you to work deep into the depth of the receiving group. So it's all going to be based off light fronts, lots of nickels. I think you're going to see, some 3-4 looks. If you go back to his last year with the Broncos, you saw a couple of games with 3-4 fronts. And then it was like a 4-3 front a little bit. But the rest of the season was nickel. And so our front, I think, can handle it. I think we have the ability to, but okay, look at Josh Allen. Josh Allen struggles post snap. And that's what this defense is going to force him to do. It's going to force teams to have to run on this light front. And I don't know if the Bills could do that, and then read post snap. And so I like what this defense does against the Bills. Against the Jets, now, Sela, the guy over there, Coach S, he has a lot of the elements of Fangio's system, and Rodgers has seen this system a lot. He knows it. He was in the division with the Bears. And so he's going to see a lot in practice. He knows it. And I don't think it's going to be as effective against the Jets because they can run. And even though they don't have a great depth at secondary, and then there's the Patriots. Now, the Patriots, they can run, they're the team that does want to kind of march it down the field, but I don't know if they got the pop talent. So I really like us against the Bills. I think it's going to be, mixed results against the Jets. And I think it doesn't really, it's not the best against the Patriots, but the Patriots are kind of hamstrung because they have a limited quarterback. So I think overall, I think we have the ability to do what we need to do, which is beat the Bills and really test them and force the Jets and the Patriots to run on us. But running on us is not easy when you got Wilkins, when you got Sealer, when you got Agba, when you got Chubb. And so that's really where I'm at with this defense. I think we got plenty of talent in front and in the secondary to run Fangio's system. I think all eyes have to be on this linebacking group. Capiche? How does it seem? Give you a last look at this. So let's go. I'm going to study out some more. I'm going to try to do some more pulling together of it. But I like Cam being able to play that cornerback spot. I like Needham be able to play that cornerback spot. I like Kohu to play that cornerback spot, whether it's nickel or it's boundary. Although Kohu suffers from deep. Now Kohu, Needham, they suffer from when a play goes on too long. So I don't know if I like them so much when they have to cover the top in a cover 3, cover 4. But I do like them on this defense. But Cam, Ramsey, and Howard, I do like what we have. It's this linebacking group. So that's where I'm at, guys. Yeah, it could, because the Chargers can't run. Ravens, the Bengals, I'm sorry, I'm Dolphinator. I forgot to click it up there. That's a really good question. I'm not going to answer it. I have to consider it. I immediately had some answers to it. And the Bengals, I think, might be a little bit different than what you used to. But they're deep in their 3 wide receiver group. I like this against the Chargers, though. If we can manage to run against them and just play what we're doing here, limiting them, because a lot of the stuff that we lost to them last year was because of breakdowns and man coverage and such. I really like it against the Chargers. Not certain on the Ravens yet. I got to see what they're doing. They're changing the way they look. And I don't know what Lamar's going to do as far as really trying to sacrifice his body to win and stuff. And that adds some different elements. And I got to see what the offensive line looks like. Offensive line is key against this defense. You don't got the offensive line to match up to our front. Forget it. It's going to be a long day. Forget it. But if you got an offensive line that can match up with our front and force us out of that light box, that could be a problem. And the Chargers, they invested a lot in this offensive line. So I got to remember this one. I'm going to write this one down, and I'm going to do some investigation on it, Dolphinator. So anyway, guys, that's what I got for you. I think I covered all my topics. My old man throat is kind of melting. Any comments, any thoughts, anything where you thought I was wrong, or any points of wisdom you could add to it? Because I really do believe this is a group thing, man. I really believe that we're a team of scouts trying to evaluate this thing called NFL football. So whatever you guys can offer, I really appreciate it. But I will be working really hard over the next month to do some real deep. I want to watch every Fangio game, his defensive snaps from the Broncos and the Chicago, and I'm going to break down a lot of the stuff that I wasn't really too certain on and I'm learning about, and then mesh it all together and try to get a pre-training camp podcast that's really definitive on the subject. But that's really it, guys. I really like our direction. I don't want to put my foot in the ground and say we're going to be this or that, other than I like the top of our defense. I love the front of our defense, and I am a little bit questionable or curious or breathlessly anticipating the arrival of what we have at the linebacking group. That, to me, is going to be what determines how good this defense is, the linebacking group. And I wouldn't write it off. I believe Long, if he's healthy, he's going to help us a ton. I believe Baker can really finally find his spot and show himself to be a good player. And Tyndale, that's going to got to be a guy that really rises, because, you know, if he doesn't, then you got Duke and VG. And I don't know. So that's all, folks. I appreciate everything, guys, staying with me for this long. Second here. And I appreciate you guys, man. I still don't understand. I'm so grateful. I don't know. I told you, I was like, told my wife, I'm like, no one's going to listen to me. Nobody. She's like, do it. So you guys, man, you put up with me. I'm a bit of a monkey. I screw up guys' names. I screw up the technology. I lack a little showmanship and stuff. So I appreciate you guys more than you could really imagine. And I'm really trying to find a way to get to one of these games and try to do a, what do they call that? Like the pre-party, the tailgate party thing, so I can meet you guys. That means a ton to me. It really does. I want to see your faces, man. I really would like to meet some of you guys going to the game. Hey, thank you, Lamar. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Anyway, guys, I could go on. Yeah, me screwing it up and being a jackass monkey, right? Hey, whatever you got to do. That's what I told him when A's per head. I said, all right, but you're gonna have to pay me to do this thing here, you know. And they told me the number. I said, okay, I guess you can throw pies in my face if you want, whatever you want. So I guess I come up here and be a jackass. So it's worth it. Anyway, guys, I'll get better. I appreciate you guys more than you can really imagine. I mean that deeply from the heart. And last thing, there's a guy. He's been commenting since the beginning. He became a friend of mine. We talk on the side, and I haven't heard from him now in over a month. He said he had COVID, and he looked at my messages, and then he doesn't even look at my message, doesn't answer my email anymore. And I'm terribly, 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 terribly worried. So please pray, hope, or whatever. I'm not going to mention his name, but you've probably seen his comments before. He hasn't been around for a while. So please put all the good mojo out there and you can from him. I'm hoping to hear from him soon. Anyway, guys, you're the best. Curtis saying, catch you next time. Be well. Go Fins.